And columnist at The National, and Ryan Sabey, the Deputy Political Editor at The Sun. Happy Easter, guys. Thanks so much for joining us this Saturday. Shall we kick off then, Shona, with The Guardian? Teachers warn of a surge in racism and misogyny in British classrooms. This is quite shocking, isn't it?
Yeah, it is, but sadly, perhaps not surprising given some of the conversations that have been going on in recent. This is a survey of teachers that found social media, they believe, is the #1 cause of pupil misbehaviour, with female staff bearing the brunt. And there's calls for a plan to tackle what has become a national emergency. It's summed up quite bleakly but succinctly as a teacher saying pupils watch violent and extreme pornographic material, their attention spans have dropped, they read lots of fake news that make them feel empowered and that they know better than the teacher. So you have these awful dynamics where the students are perhaps behaving more negatively among one another, but also really undermining the teachers. And something that I sort of hear, I don't have children myself, but I hear a lot of buzz about is what's also referenced here, that concerns about parents who refuse to accept school rules or take responsibility for their children's behaviour. So in my day, you know, if your parents were called up to the school, you'd be in big trouble, you know, when you got home. These days, it seems there is this worrying thing where the parents go, well, I think that was perfectly reasonable of what my child's done, or that's maybe how they behave at home, and it's a standard that's being accepted. And then it makes them impossible to discipline at school, especially if the parents are kind of lining up with the pupil rather than the school.
It's worrying, isn't it, Ryan? You know, you've got girls, one of them in primary school.
Primary school, one secondary school. And it just shows that sort of level of respect, or the lack of respect across, you know, between pupils and staff. I mean, this is a big survey. 5,800 teachers took part in this. And they're talking about how 10-year-olds are blocking doorways, barking at female staff in the corridors. I mean, it's really concerning. And if they're doing that at the age of 10 or 11, what's going to happen when they get into their later teens or when they get into adulthood?
And that's the thing, isn't it? It's the social media that seems to be fueling what's happening in our classrooms. And the shocking thing for me was that, you know, one primary school teacher, a primary school teacher, is saying a 10-year-old is refusing to speak to her but will only respond to the male teaching assistant. And like you say, kids barking at teachers. Where did it all go wrong, Shona?
Well, I think, yeah, we do have to trust that the teachers can join the dots and understand where some of the language, some of the phrasing is coming from, and that, yes, there's certain, you know, Donald Trump and Andrew Tate mentioned here, but there are a lot of other influencers, and some of it is perhaps a bit more subtle and insidious, and really making boys and young men in particular feel empowered by telling them, you know, this is your place in the world and this is how you should treat others. And it might be, in some cases, subtle, in other cases not. But a bombardment of these messages from all different directions. And of course, the algorithm, as we know, feeds this. If you sign up and pretend to be a teenage boy, doesn't matter what you engage with, the algorithm will start flooding you with this very, very negative content, but dressed up as positivity, dressed up as empowering.
Yeah, it is a worry.
Let's hope the teachers actually get some time to teach. You know, they're
Yeah,
meant to
well,
be
that's another
English,
line.
maths, you know, the core subjects. And it doesn't seem like they seem like they're spending so much time focused on behaviour and making sure people are attending and maybe engaging. That you know, are they actually getting those key subjects across?
Yeah, it's a big worry, isn't it? We'll have to leave that one now for a moment. Can we move on to the Daily Telegraph? Rachel Reeves saying that it's foolish, Ryan, to cut all ties with China. And she cites, doesn't she, the fashion chain Shein and supporting that floating on the stock market.
That's right. The big issues around Britain's place in the world. Do we, you know, get closer ties to Europe? Is it closer ties to America? Closer ties to China? Rachel Reeves actually goes to America next week. She's got big meetings at the International Monetary Fund, and there she's going to be pushing with the trade deal. Now, we've got America, who are trying to make sure that all their allies are cutting off ties or not trying to be as close to China. But one thing Rachel Reeves is saying, that it's actually very foolish to cut off those ties. And one thing that she's trying to do is that she has no problem with the fast fashion chain Shein actually trying to list in this country, and should actually welcome it. And should also welcome people who are leaving America because of the tariffs, and to come actually here as well. So And I think as well, because of the situation with the steel industry over recent days and how the government actually seized control of the company, that she's trying to sort of build some bridges with China.
Yeah, she's also saying, Shona, that she'd have no problem to drive or ride a Chinese-made EV too.
Yeah, and this is in relation to potential espionage fears. And you do have these very conflicting sort of positions among many people of understanding the role that China plays in the world and developing a lot of this technology, but having quite legitimate fears about the consequences of that. And I think when you're talking about something like Shein on the stock market, I mean, the Telegraph is referring to concerns, allegations about supply chain and use of forced labour. But I mean, the concerns go way beyond that. And you have to ask whether that's a consumer ethics issue rather than something that, you know, Rachel Reeves should be you're trying to block. She's talking in quite general terms about wanting to welcome new listings and wanting the London Stock Exchange to make the UK a more vibrant place to list, without getting into the details of that. But yes, in the context of the upcoming meeting with the US, she is taking a very different tone, certainly, from Donald Trump.
OK, a different tone on the Daily Mail, the front page here, and from Kemi Badenoch, quite a personal interview that she's done, talking about her cousin who killed himself after going down an internet rabbit hole, she calls it. So it's on the front page, but it's page 12 and 13 of the Daily Mail. And this is all, I suppose, springing off the back of an interview that she did with the BBC, where she was having to defend why she hadn't watched the Netflix drama Adolescence. And she was persistently pressed on that issue. And this interview kind of lays out why potentially she didn't have to, because she'd experienced something closer to home that was hard-hitting.
Yeah, I mean, it was quite a surreal and bizarre interview, that. I think the word documentary was used several times, even though, obviously that's a drama series. And, I think Kemi Badenoch must have thought very carefully about how and when to disclose this, or indeed if to disclose this, a very personal issue involving her family. And what I think is really interesting with all of the discussion about online content, including children as well as adults, is that a lot of people are, I think, willfully ignorant about how many layers of horrifying things are going on the internet. And what Kemi Badenoch refers to is pro-mortalism and anti-natalism content, which she said she'd never heard about these things. She didn't even know what they were, and I think learned about it horrifically through a very detailed and graphic suicide note that her cousin left. And I think it is right to raise concerns about adults being exposed to negative content as well on the internet. But the problem is that even by talking about these things, people might go, well, what's that? And go and look things up. And I think people can be very suggestible. And I think it's important that she says, while she opposes social media for under 16s, or certainly considering that she would support a ban for that, she's saying it's not just children. She admits to watching funny reels on Instagram for up to 30 minutes at a time, and said if adults find it addictive, what chance do kids have? And I think that's really important to understand, that it's not just young boys or young people being influenced. Adults can and are influenced by negative influences, fake news, all the rest of it as well.
Yeah, I think the fake news issue, particularly for that primary setting, is a huge issue, isn't it, Ryan?
I think one of the big issues as well for Kemi Badenoch is just trying to get the sort of the cut through. She's really struggled in recent sort of months to get on the front pages or get in the headlines. So she has had to use this personal interview, and she's getting crowded out in that space on the right of politics. She's got Nigel Farage to contend with, a big chase for votes in the local elections coming up, and I think it's been very tough start for her. So maybe seeing a more sort of personal interview, talking about her family, it might just make her a little bit more personal with the voters. And that hot topic also of banning smartphones and social media for the under 16s, I think will hit a lot of parents. There's a growing movement, isn't there? Totally. Totally.
parents to do that.
I remember speaking to people in Rishi Sunak's government, and they were talking about the ban for under-16s. I know this government has spoken about it. There's a review going on at the moment, but it polled so well with parents because they realise that their children are just going to their bedroom, they're onto their phone, and you don't see them for hours on end.
Yeah, don't want to lose them to social media. Before we go, The Sun, page 11, peace in our time at the bar. We've got not very long, but this is an extra 2 hours, 60 seconds, to be precise.
Yeah, that's right. A big decision from Keir Starmer, one of the biggest ones of the week. They're going to open the pubs for an extra couple of hours to celebrate the end for VA Day, the 80th anniversary. There's one thing to bear in mind, though. It's actually the actual 2 hours are actually going to be on a Thursday evening, and the Friday isn't going to be a bank holiday, so you're going to have to worry about your sore heads when you go to work the next day. So, just watch it when you have that final drink.
Advice from us is to get annual leave in ASAP.
Now, book it.
Right?
Yes, book it now.
All right, we'll have to leave it there. Ryan Schoner, thanks so much for your company in this. You'll be back next hour. We'll have another chatter then. Thank you so much. Well, that's all from us for this hour. We're going to head for a short break. We'll be back, though, after a short break with all your top stories, including your sport, with Al Jackie. We'll see you then. Bye for now.